One of the harsh realities that we face in life is that most people get to the end of their life without ever realizing where we are. And this is actually what it means to become consciously adept. Now, adept essentially means to adapt. It is the one who is advanced enough to where you could throw them into any space, any situation, and they'd be able to figure out which way is up, which way is down, which way is left, which way is right, and so on. So, the thing about being in this incarnation and in this hostile environment is that many people don't realize that it is a hostile environment. So, if you're to think about dreams, and how many people, probably most people, have had some sort of dream where they don't actually realize that they're dreaming. And they're getting so involved in it, so swept away by the colors and the story that they don't recognize that they're in a dream. They're in a sort of sleep state. So, just like a dream, this happens in reality, in waking life, I should say. I'm not saying that reality is a dream necessarily. Sure, there may be similarities and there may be philosophy that actually says that life is some sort of dream in the context of like our eternal soul's experience. But reality is something, life is something that is very real. And it is something that if we don't recognize what's going on here and how to actually find our bearing, then we can fall prey to many forces that really don't have our best interests in mind. Now think of the word pray there and how many people are out praying. If those of you who have followed me for a while, you know that I've really been hammering on the religion and the worship aspects of spirituality recently and how that actually ends up dividing you from yourself. Now to pray is to become the prey of something. You think of that word and it's because in this reality where many are lulled into sleep, we're born into this reality and essentially just like we go along with the story. As children and infants, we don't know anything. So we just go about the process and generally gain our framework viewpoint on the world from our parents, from our teachers, from society. And people end up putting us into this space where we're really not seeing things for what they are. Now, the reason I've been hammering so hard on these aspects of worship and these aspects of why you don't want to divide from yourself is because there are indeed entities and forces in this space that want your energy. They want to keep you entrapped and to keep you powering something because spiritual essence, spiritual energy is a commodity, essentially. It's something that is so valuable. There are places in the world, such as the Vatican, such as New York City, such as the Black Cube that they have in the Middle East, that are actually designed specifically to harvest emotions, to harvest deep and dark emotions from humans in order to serve a being that is just trying to stay alive because it has disconnected from its own source. So, my friends, this is a journey about realizing our own wholeness and our own connection to the Supreme Being, to the self, all right? Because in a space that there's so many beings that want to take you apart, quite literally, they want to consume you, you can get lost here. You can find yourself in a space where you might have been reincarnating over and over and over into the same situation because you're not learning the lesson that you need to learn, which is to come back to yourself. Now, reincarnation in itself is not a bad thing because if you need to come back and learn a new lesson for your soul, that's totally fine. That was the original intention behind the creator who created this whole matrix, was to have reincarnation as something where it's like, okay, if you didn't figure it out in this life, you can figure it out in another life, and you can keep going on that progression. But with the hostile entities in this space that recognize what reincarnation does and how they could trap a soul in a cycle of servitude, this has been used as a tool for these malicious entities. Because if a being goes through their life and then they pass on from this space, and when they pass on from that space, they go directly to the being that they've been worshiping, what they're going to end up doing is essentially falling under that being, which that being is ruling over the underworld, which is more, it's not hell, it's more of a space of like confusion and purgatory than anything. And then that soul will inevitably have to reincarnate back to earth to do the same thing. So there's many souls on this planet who have been worshiping certain deities and certain entities for thousands of years, and they keep reincarnating and doing the same thing. It's because they were birthed into this space not knowing where they are. Just as all of us are. We tend to not have our bearing and not have an understanding of where we are and what's happening, so we can be easily fooled by things. But this is why, my friends, it's so important to have the knowledge. This is what true awakening actually is, awakening on an adept level. Because you realize that there's nothing outside of you that was designed to save you. Because the power that you were seeking, the power that even could save you, is within yourself. And the fact that it's within yourself means that you never needed saving in the first place. So for those who are always stuck just trying to get on the good graces of these entities and these gods, they're going to go through their life and get to the end of their life having never found their bearing in this place. They're never going to arrive at the place where they recognize the actual power of their vessel. They never stepped into the control room, so to speak, and decided, this is where I'm going to fly my ship. This is where I'm going to take it. Because, my friends, the way out of here is through yourself. You're not trying to get to somewhere. You're not trying to go to heaven or stay away from going to hell or anything like that. You're not trying to be saved by something. That was never the point. And these narratives have come about because if you think about malicious entities, they're not dumb. It's not like they're dumb and they somehow took power over humanity. They exploited the natural psychology that exists within humans that actually makes people vulnerable. They're afraid of what they don't know. And when people are afraid of what they don't know, if you can swoop in and offer a solution, even if it's not a true solution, the psychology tends to say, okay, survival, that's the best option. I don't know what's going to happen or how I'm going to get through this space. And they don't know themselves. They're disconnected from themselves. So just like the person in the dream, they're going through the dream and they're just being drug along by the plot line, by the shiny, flashy colors and by all of the characters. And then they've fallen asleep into it. So they're not seeing that through going through this process, they're not actually coming into a state of awakening into the space that exists beyond this space. Let me reflect on this again for you. It's just like I said, it's not about getting somewhere. It's about recognizing the space that you already exist in. That's what awakening is. Now think if you were to become lucid in your dream. You were to recognize, oh, this is just a dream. I now have control over this. Because it's just a dream. It's just something that is a projection of my subconscious, which is the same thing that life is here. It is a projection of our soul going through these prisms that we call bodies. Now, if we were to recognize that we are the consciousness that shines through ourselves, you realize that you're in a space, you're in the same space that you came from. And you're in the same space that you're going to right now. You're not trying to get anywhere, so anything that offers you something that's like, well, I can help you get to here. Well, I can help you fix this. I can help you get rid of this and do things like that. It's a scam. It's like a salesman coming to you and they're saying like, boy, have I got a deal for you. Let me open my briefcase. But that's what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with a space where souls have continued to have basically been recycled over and over and over because these entities know that when these souls continue to serve them, these entities remain powerful. They can keep their reign going on because they don't have a connection to the source because what they're doing is divided. What they're doing is very divisive. So what they need is to get power from outside of them, which is why they need you. They need you to fuel them and to give them power so they can actually continue to be immortal in this space because they're just going to sink lower if nothing fuels them. They're going to sink further into a state of confusion, into a state of desolation. But because so many people are powering them and fueling them and giving them their energy, they're essentially exerting that control and that specific kind of energy over this space. Which is why we see what's going on in the world today. We see fake medicine. We see fake banking systems. We see fake politics. All of this kind of stuff that's just desolation, wars, famine. These things come from unbalanced entities that have so much more power over this earth that they can continue to possess individuals who don't know where they are. And these individuals just keep serving them like, oh, well, they'll save us and they'll take care of this. I'm not even talking about necessarily like the human ones that serve them. They're praying to these gods, thinking these gods actually have it in their mind that they're going to save humanity, that they're going to do something. And if we keep praying to this thing and we be good whatevers, then yeah, eventually this thing is going to fix all the problems. But they're the ones causing the problems. This is what people miss. And this is, again, what it means to be adept in this space. It's to realize that you are the self. You are exactly what you are looking for, and you always have been, and that space that you want to get to is within you, and it always has been. It's where you were before this. So that's one of the things that really doesn't make sense with these narratives of people saying, well, I want to get to here and I want to get to here, but they don't think about where they were before now. It's like, were you in heaven and then you decided to incarnate? Now you have to do this process again, and if you were good, you get to go to heaven again, or then you're going to go to hell. Why would you have come back? Why would you have incarnated here if that was actually the narrative, if that was actually the story? And now this obviously reflects more of like the Western senses of religion, as it has been adapted to the Western senses of religion. But this is the same with all the traditions, even coming from the East, that had some sort of religious figure or some religious deity. There's some space that was represented where it's like, well, you want to go here and not here. And these were more like metaphorical senses of saying that if you are the prism, again, if your body is the prism that your soul is shining through, and that is the light that projects through this, if you shed your body, what sort of light do you think you're projecting? And then beyond your body, everything is energy, everything is frequency. So when you start to vibrate in a certain frequency, if that frequency is a higher consciousness and a unified sort of field of consciousness, you're going to end up in a place that reflects exactly that. But if it's divisive and you're looking outside of yourself for something, in other words, if you have externalized your own power, you're going to end up in a place where something has power over you. That's the game, my friends. That is what it means to be in a hostile space. There is something here that wants you. It wants your energy. It wants your light. It wants your power for itself. And it's going to sell you like giving your power to that is actually going to benefit you in some way, which is absolutely false. So, my friends, we have to come back to ourselves. We have to realize what it means to be whole, to no longer be dividing and saying this is me and this is not, all is self. The deeper that we can actually step into that consciousness and realize the true power that exists within our supreme essence, the more that we're going to be aligned with the kind of space we want to experience anyways, and the more that that ends up actually manifesting on this earth plane. You know, because this earth plane, it has been corrupted. It has been taken advantage of by beings that came down from higher places and essentially manipulated humanity. They exploited humanity to actually keep them in a disempowered state so they could remain powerful. But all of the systems that tell us what these beings are seem to say otherwise. It seems to say, no, they're the saviors and the creators of all, and holy them, praise thy name. Like these sorts of things, right? We have the same capacity to be supreme as they do. And that's what we all need to recognize. That's what truly it means to awaken in this space. You find your bearings, you recognize who you are. This is what self-awareness is too, because a lot of people think, well, it's just, okay, I'm aware of my actions. No, self-awareness is being aware of who and what you are and where you came from. Because that awareness of self actually sets you free. Because you then tune into what's actually true. Not what can be proven is true, like this is what the book says and this is what this says, but what's actually true. What's actually true doesn't need to prove itself because it simply is. It is simply a state of being. It is an isness. And that's not something that has to prove itself. Oh, well, the story said this and these people said this and then the gods told me that I can only do this if I do this. No. They made up stories to serve them. But what's actually true is something that's objective and something that's so far beyond all these narratives that exists deep within you. And the more that you know that deeply and intrinsically within yourself, the more that you're going to see through all of the facades. You're going to see through all of the smoke and mirrors that are keeping people in a trance-like state where they're asleep and they're going through this process of just accepting reality as it is and not realizing that Earth itself, if it wasn't manipulated, could be a place of very high consciousness, of very high awareness, where souls could be going through here and learning lessons very quickly in their lifetimes. And then if they're reincarnating, they're actually progressing. Because, my friends, that's the issue. That's why I hammer on these ideas so much. It's because when souls continue to reincarnate believing the same thing over and over and over and over and just giving their essence to these beings that only want to own them, they become more and more confused. You gradually lose energy. The soul gradually loses its natural essence because of how convoluted it comes lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. It's when we can go through stages and actually learn our lessons and level up and level in, should I say. That's how we actually make progress. That's how we actually step into higher levels of realities that exist far beyond this duality of the up one and the down one. There are infinite realities we could experience as souls, as awareness, as pure conscious awareness. But this reality has all these systems that are trying to keep you divided. They're trying to keep you distracted and take you out of yourself. Because if you were to wake up to the power that you actually are inherently, these systems would crumble. All right, my friends, that's all for today. Be whole, be well, and take care. We'll talk soon.